We have a quorum, so I'll call the meeting of the Electoral Area Service Committee Wednesday, May 10, 2023 to order. A First Nations territorial acknowledgement. We are located on the traditional territory of the Latchwatach people, and we need a motion to adopt the public agenda.
Move adoption of the agenda.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. No petitions or delegations for the previous minutes of April 12, 2023 for adoption.
Move adoption.
Second.
Discussion? See none. All those in favor? Opposed? That's unanimous. That's carried. Nope. Or is there any business arising from the minutes? None. No public considerations or notice of motion or chair report. Down to staff reports. Number 1, Cortez Solid Waste Curbside Recycling Pickup Remediation Plan for receipt.
Move receipt.
Second.
And I believe Wolf can speak to this, Mr. Chair.
Through the chair to the commission, Sheena will introduce this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Commission. So at, I believe it was the last ISC meeting, we introduced a letter that we received from Recycle BC, where they were asking us to develop a remediation plan to increase the yield of the curbside recycling. When we received that letter in January, we began explorations and discussions with our service, our partners in providing the service, being our collection contractor and Comox Strathcona Waste Management, to develop possible avenues to meet the objectives or the requirements of Recycle BC. We put that together in a draft plan for Recycle BC, which was submitted on time. They have subsequently accepted the plan, and we've already started putting the things into motion, even though it doesn't technically start until May 15th. The main drivers of that plan are mostly around promotion and education, informing residents about the service, the benefit that it provides, as well as letting them know the impacts should the incentives from Recycle BC be diminished or taken away if we're not successful, which is a loss of that funding and likely increase to the user fees. One of the big things that we're working on is adding glass back into the collection, which poses a number of logistic and safety concerns. So we're working with the collection contractor on how to accommodate that. The collection volumes increase over the summer regardless, just due to an influx of visitors and people on the island, which limits their ability to add this new material on their normal runs. So we are asking them for some proposals to add a separate day of glass collection once a month to see if that can be delivered without increasing the service costs this year, just so we can get an idea of how much glass we're even able to collect on island and if it's a viable product to help us meet those weights. Glass is nice and heavy, so we're hoping that it gives us a lot of bang for our bucks, but the collection contractor has already stated that most of the glass that they used to receive was refundables, which will not count towards our weight. So that's sort of where we're at right now. We're meeting with Recycle BC in June to have some more discussions, and Recycle BC is also going to visit the island so that they can get sort of a feel for the unique culture and solid waste management habits of island residents that they might not be expecting, seeing as they're all based in the urban environment of Metro Vancouver. So that's where we're at. We haven't started the educational campaign. It will include an insert into the user invoices that are going to be sent out in May or June. So that will be a direct pamphlet to everybody who's part of the service. We're hoping that will be an effective way of reaching everybody, as well as a website and putting up some posters in high volume areas such as the ferry terminals and the grocery store, which is kind of, I think, the options. Definitely open to suggestions about other locations that might meet the qualification of high volume area, but that's where we're at. So we'll be working with Comox Strathcona Waste Management and Recycle BC on getting volume updates so we can sort of track how we're going. But as I mentioned, volumes increase in the summer anyway, so that might sort of skew our ability to see how effective, to see if the increase is related to the campaign or just the population change there. Updates will be provided. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to respond.
Anything from directors? Director Mawini?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I was curious about the measuring? Like, how frequently is this happening, and how concerned are they are Recycle BC? Like, is it a 3-month timeline, or are they watching it by the week, or how's that being tabulated?
6 months. And I assume that we'll be in contact with them, and we'll see how that goes. But essentially, the plan is a 6-month plan.
Anything further? Oh, Mark, go ahead. Director Vanesh. Can't hear you, it must be muted.
We can weirdly hear him coming out of somebody's computer.
Off.
There you go.
Testing 1, 2. Can you hear me?
Yeah, all good now.
Okay, great. Thank you. I just want to thank Sheena and Wolfgang for their work on this. Cortez Island is really concerned about recycling and I want to definitely increase their volume and appreciate the work that's gone into getting us this far. It was a surprise to a lot of folks on Cortez that so much of the curbside pickup was being subsidized. So it's been educational for a lot of folks, and look forward to making progress on this. Thank you.
Anything further? Seeing none on receipt, all those in favor? Opposed? There's none, so that's carried. Number 2, regulation of groundwater resources for receipt.
Move receipt.
Second.
Discussion?
I believe Annika will speak to this.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair to the committee, the staff was asked through a board motion to explore options for regulations of groundwater extraction, water bottling, processing, and sales. We had done some work on this historically as part of a number of referrals that we were receiving through the province for licenses for both extraction and bottling. When we did that research a couple of years ago, we did receive a number of legal opinions with respect to the regional district's authority to regulate either extraction, bottling, processing, or sales. Those legal opinions did confirm that our authority when it comes to groundwater extraction is quite limited, as it is regulated provincially and licensed through the province. It did, however, say that, through our land use authority, we do have the ability to use our zoning powers to regulate uses that would occur following water extraction. So that would be processing, sales, bottling, that sort of thing. We also would have the ability to have a policy in place that would help inform the province when we receive referrals for groundwater extraction. To date, we have not put forward a policy. However, based on historic motions of ESCOM board, we have not to date supported groundwater extraction, and that is comments that have been provided to the province in the past. However, as stated, it is a provincial within the authority of the province, and so those licenses have been, for the most part, issued anyways. So that's where we're at with groundwater extraction. When it comes to processing and sales, the zoning bylaws each do regulate for those sorts of uses, which would be commercial and industrial in nature. So at this time, applications or proposals for water bottling, processing, or sales would be regulated through the zoning bylaw and would only be permitted in commercial and industrial zones. Should the committee wish to further regulate those sorts of uses, we could do something to that effect by opening up each respective zoning bylaw and putting in a general provision that would only allow for those sorts of uses where expressly permitted in the bylaw. So if that were to occur at this time, there is nowhere in the bylaw that would expressly permit that. And so if a new proposal were to come forward for either processing, sales, or bottling, that would have to go through a rezoning process and evaluated on its individual merit. And that was supported by the legal counsel when we went through and received the legal opinion to ensure that when the board is considering these sorts of uses, that they maintain an open mind and allow for a public process and for public comment before making their decisions. So that's where we're at with respect to the current regulations, and I'm open to any questions should you have any.
Anything from directors? Director Mawini?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to staff for this great report. And I was kind of surprised at how quickly it arrived, but now I know why, because you've already had historic legal opinions. And I would like to make a motion. Is now the right time to do that?
After receipt, you can make a motion.
Okay, that's what I thought. Just wanted to make sure. So I will leave it at thank you for now, and once we've done receipt, I would like to make a motion.
Any further discussion? Oh, it's down now, okay.
Mark, was your hand up or down? Or,
It's down now, thanks.
okay.
Okay, thank you. On receipt then, calling the question. All those in favor? None opposed, that's carried. And Director Mawini?
Thank you, Chair. I will move that staff provide a bylaw amendment for areas B, C, and D, which would only permit bulk water sales, processing, and bottling where expressly permitted. And that's my motion, but I also remembered that I had a question about the policy. Would that be a board policy? Is that what you were referring to?
It could be a board policy.
So we'll need a second for discussion.
Second.
So is that legitimate under the legal authority we have?
I'm sorry, what was the
I
question?
wondered if that's a legitimate motion that we have under the legal authority that we possess?
Well, we would interpret that as a recommendation to the board from this committee.
Okay.
That staff look at amendment bylaws to areas B, C, and D to basically regulate groundwater extraction, or rather the use of water extracted from groundwater. That's how we would interpret that if it passes.
All righty. Any further discussion?
Just that, and maybe to help answer your question, and if it wasn't legal, we'd come back and tell you.
Yeah.
It's not.
Thank you. On
I've got
the
one
question
question.
then, oh, you got a question, Director Rice?
Just one question. I'm wondering how much time would this take and how much effort would be involved to making the changes that we're asking for?
Aniko, I think you're probably best able to answer that.
Well, we would add it to our list of items, and as you know, the next report outlines some of those key items. But I mean, in a simple answer is it's a simple amendment, but it is a process.
Thank you.
On the motion, call the question. All those in favor? And none opposed. That's carried. Number 3, 2023 Planning and Parks Initiative and Project Update for receipt.
Move receipt.
Second?
Second.
So, Mr. Chair, if I can, maybe just a quick introduction. And what I've tried to do is just inspire some discussion about some of the things for this group that are either on the go, they were in the budget, there was direction from the previous board to move forward with these things, and just kind of open some discussion, have Aniko explain these are planning processes for the electoral areas. We, of course, have work for the board that we do in other committees. So we've tried to dissect the piece out that pertains to you folks most importantly, and have a discussion about them and see if, I don't personally care for the word work plan, but try and kind of create some priorities and work plan and format where we can come back on some timetable and report updates on these. So I'll pass it over to Aniko as she can run through these, and then we can have a discussion about your thoughts and priorities and maybe some further direction on this.
Thank you. Through the chair to the committee. So we're aware that we have a number of long-standing, long-range projects that have been on our list of things to address. And some of these go back as far as about 2012-ish. So what we've tried to do here is identify the key planning bylaws that are in desperate need of review and update. And those other policy type long-range plans that have been supported by the board as being in line with the board's strategic initiatives, and just provide you an overview of where we are at with each of those priorities currently, and a proposed timeline for completion for those projects. I've also added the parks projects in this list as well, the long-range projects, because they're kind of similar in nature, and there's some similarities with respect to consultation and staff resourcing. So as you can see, there's a couple bylaws that are currently in progress and have been in progress for some time. Some of them have been sitting on the shelf, mostly completed, but never adopted by the board. That would be the Area D OCP, which we do have a historic draft of that review that occurred through quite a bit of community consultation a number of years ago. We also have the Planning and Procedures bylaw review, which is primarily focused around fees. Those fees have not been updated for quite some time, and there is a board motion for us to do that, as well as the Cortez Island zoning bylaw, which I think most of you are aware was reviewed a number of years ago, was brought forward to the board, and then sent back to staff for some additional review and updating and consultation. So that's currently also in review. And then we have our land use replacement software replacement. That is a long-range project. It's obviously not a plan that the board would see, but that is our in-house platform for hosting all of our property information and all of our applications that are related to building bylaw and planning applications. So those are the 4 that are currently in process. We have just onboarded a new planner as of last week, so super excited to report on that. That planner is picking up those bylaws that are currently in a draft form, revisiting those to ensure that they are still in line with current legislation, given the fact that a number of years have gone by, and then refreshing that draft and planning to bring those draft bylaws back to the community for further consultation before bringing it to EASC for its consideration. So you'll see that we hope to be able to do that between now and end of July. The other items on the planning list, those will be picked up once we complete those first 4 items that were just mentioned. Those are the Area C Master Transportation Plan and the Area C OCP, as well as the Floodplain Management Bylaw, which requires a lot of work. And you'll see that that's on the docket for December. It will likely not happen until later in 2020 or earlier, but not until 2024 because it will likely need some funding to complete mapping and such. And then we have the long-range parks projects. You'll see that we're currently working through obtaining the data collection for our park inventory. That was approved by the board, so we're hoping to have that completed by September. And then we also have the 2 parks master plans, which we're hoping to have a consultant work on starting in September and completing before the end of the year. Those are the long-range projects. I think I'll probably pause for a moment before discussing the capital projects. So I'll pause there in case there's discussion, questions.
Anything from directors? Councilor Winnie, go ahead.
Thank you for that great chart. I was really happy to also to read that the SRD staff will be primarily handling the work in the chart. That I really appreciate that. The planning procedures and bylaw review, could you explain a little bit more about what that entails, and will it affect residents? That would be my first question.
As stated, it's primarily to update the fee structure. So we are not bringing in enough revenue to actually process these applications. So the amount of staff time, advertising, hall rentals, and the like, we're having to use other budget to pay for those costs. So our fee structure is very old. It was carried over from the Comox Strathcona Regional District and has not been updated since then, and is certainly not in line with other local governments in the area. So desperately need to do that. Outside of that, I mean, the planning and procedures bylaw obviously also outlines the process for each of our applications. At this time, there isn't really much that we've identified that needs to be addressed from that perspective. So primarily just revisiting the fees. So doing some research and ensuring that what we bring forward is in line with other similar local governments in the area when it comes to fees.
Director Vinesh?
Thank you, Chair. Just a question about the Cortez Island zoning bylaw around timing. It says end date October 2023. Is that the end date of when we hope to have this approved by the board, or is that the end date when we're going to be prepared to start the community consultation process? And if not, when would the community consultation process be expected to start?
Yeah, thank you for that. So for clarity, our hope is that we, over the next few weeks, month, we review the current draft document, and then we start doing community consultation. Based on what comes out of that community consultation, that will kind of determine where we'll be at with a final draft that will be brought back to the Electoral Area Services Committee and then on to the board. The timeline provided here considers us completing the draft by October, end of October, and then having it being considered by EASC and board. So again, that's the hope, but depending on where we get with community consultation, we're hoping that there's not a lot more work that needs to be done on the bylaw. There was a couple areas that weren't visited during the last review that the community thought we could revisit later. So there's a couple items that have not been explored much at all with the community, but for the most part, the rest of the bylaw review and those changes were based on the community consultation that happened of late. So as long as we're still in line with what the community had supported previously, we're hopeful that we'll be able to meet this timeline.
Thank you.
Director Rice?
Just one question on the OCP update for Area D. Any idea when the public would be invited to start commenting on that?
Yeah, thank you for that. So again, similar to the Cortez Island zoning bylaw, we are currently reviewing that document. We're pulling out a couple things that are no longer relevant, updating a couple things with respect to current legislation, tightening up some of the language, and revisiting some of the designations that were proposed as part of the last bylaw review, and just revisiting some of those comments that we received through community consultation with respect to densities and lot sizes, just to ensure that the draft bylaw that we bring forward again to the community really is in line with what we heard last time around, and then bringing that bylaw out just to make sure, again, similar to Cortez, that this is still the desire of the community, and again, making any necessary changes through that consultation, and then bringing it to EASC. So our hope is that we're out to the public, hopefully sometime in June.
Thank you.
Director Mooney?
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple more threads of questions, and the first one is around the floodplain management bylaw. I looked through the SRD website, and I had no luck in finding it on the site. So I don't know the answers to these questions, which is that I don't really understand what it is, and I'm curious if it is a bylaw which is considering sea level rise as well as floodplains from, I'm assuming it's rivers, and what electoral areas does the floodplain bylaw cover?
Thank you for that. The floodplain management bylaw covers all of the electoral areas, and it regulates both flood construction levels and setbacks from both the sea and any other freshwater bodies. So it it's historic, so it likely doesn't contemplate climate change like it should, and so that's something that we would need to visit as part of the review. And again, the data that we have is very historic, and some of the mapping that we have, for instance, the salmon and white rivers, that information was provided by the province. I think it was like in the 80s or something. So, I mean, very, very historic information that certainly needs to be revisited when it comes to those rivers. And again, when it comes to sea level rise, the elevation and setback requirements are historic and really likely don't consider sea level rise in the next 50 years. So that's something that we're hoping. But again, budget would be necessary so that mapping could actually take place. So.
Go ahead, Director Mooney.
Thank you, Chair. This chart talks about official community plans for Area C. And there isn't currently an official community plan which covers the outer Discovery Islands. Could staff speak to the current vision for how the official community plan review on Quadra and the creation in other areas will take place? Will there be separate processes for Quadra and the outer Discovery Islands? And further to that, there are many residents of the outer Discovery Islands who are quite keen on an official community plan process and are already starting their own work. They've had 3 meetings to discuss areas of interest that they would like to have some staff input on, and they've sent me a list of questions, and I'm not sure if now is the time to ask you all of these questions, but I am wondering, because of that, if there would be a possibility of a planning representative at some point having capacity to have a conversation, maybe by Zoom or other ways, with some of the Outer Discovery Islands residents.
Yeah, thank you for that. We're fully aware of the Discovery Islands residents' keenness to move forward with an OCP. We heard about a lot of their desires way back when we did a consultation with them for the Integrated Community Sustainability Plan. And so I think it's fantastic that they're doing that work. Certainly when we are starting to look at the Area C OCP, which would be about September, that community consultation would take place. The plan to date is obviously community consultation needs to happen on both Quadra and the Outer Islands, and so that's always been the plan that it happens that way, so that each of those areas have their own consultation process and ability to provide staff with the direction that they would like to go and the focus for each of their individual communities. So I think that once we start looking at the need from an internal perspective and what those bylaws need to look like, then we'll go out to the community and do an initial outreach before we actually start drafting any of those plans.
Okay, just one comment from Area A. The residents of Area A that are in the OCPs, there's a couple there. When I was campaigning, I asked them if they were content with the way the OCP was worded currently, and they are. So there's no need to review those at the current time.
Yeah, thank you for that. We don't have the Menzies Bay bylaws on our list of projects. So
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything further? See none on receipt. All those in favor? Opposed? None. That is carried.
It was my understanding that staff was presenting on part of the report and then was going to continue on to talk about capital projects.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I cut you off? Go ahead.
That's okay, no problem. I know I've taken up a lot of time already, so I understand wanting to shut me down. Just kidding. So our parks projects that we have currently in our list are mainly capital projects, either funded through gas tax or reserves. We do have a couple grant-funded projects that we have received funding for through different funding mechanisms, but we are working through those, and those are priorities because we have to be in line with the requirements of those funding agreements. So you'll see that there's the Cayucot Hall and the Surge Narrows infrastructure revitalization project. Those two projects we are currently working through, and fingers crossed that we are able to meet completion dates of March 2025 for the Cayucot Hall and 2026 for the Surge Narrows Marine Revitalization projects. There are obviously a number of other projects that have either come up through just regular management and operations where need has arisen to do replacements or upgrades. So we have a number of projects that we're currently working through, and a number of projects that will start later in 2023. All of these liabilities projects we're hoping to have completed by the end of 2020 or early to mid 2024. So there's some projects in there for Area D and also for Area C. You won't see a lot of infrastructure related projects this year for Cortez Area B, only because it was so capital heavy last year. So a whole lot happened in Cortez last year, so it's a little light for that electoral area this year, but we're catching up in all areas and hoping to move forward on those projects. We have some land acquisition projects that we're trying to complete. We're trying to realign some of our parks so that we're within boundary and we're avoiding trespass issues. We're doing some improvements. We're doing some amenities for public amenities. A number of upgrades. Area D has supported a whole lot of upgrades for this year, and we're hoping to move through those as much as we can. Some of those were carry forwards from last year, but there was also support from the director for a number of new capital projects for Area D. So we're working through those. Most of these projects are being managed internally and contracted out for the actual provision of services. I don't want to go into this list because I would be here forever, but certainly I'm happy to answer any questions with respect to the list that's before you.
I have just one question, if I might. The Cayucot Community Hall, what step would we be on this year? Whereabouts are we on that?
Right now, we're just we're very preliminary right now, so we're looking towards getting reports done that are required in order to know where we're moving forward with the project. So mostly planning, I would say for most of this year, the planning part of the project.
Okay. Anything from directors? Director McWhinney?
Thank you. Was really happy to see that the revitalization grant, marine revitalization grant for Surge Narrows is on the list. And I'm wondering if there's any more tidbits of information that you can share with me and the folks out on Reed who are pretty excited about it.
Yeah, we are currently just trying to finalize an updated cost estimate. The cost estimate that we have previously is Class D, and it's old. So we're getting an update on that cost estimate to ensure that we have the required funding through that grant to move forward with the project. So once we do that, provided we have enough funds, we'll move forward with an RFP for final detailed design, engineer design.
Thank you.
Anything further?
Just Just one comment. Thank you for providing this. I know that one of the things that have always concerned Area D residents is lack of progress. So now we can actually see something taking place. So thank you.
Okay, anything further, Tom? Do we need to have a vote on receipt again?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. All right, on to number 5, building bylaw amendment, low human occupancy farm building.
Chairman, I think number 4 is next on the
Did I
list.
miss 4? Yeah, you missed 4. Oh, I did. Number 4, 2023 engineering services initiatives and projects updates for receipt.
I'll move receipt. Oh, or I'll second it.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And similar to Parks, just wanted to give the group an idea of work similar to what Annika has presented in engineering and some of the capital projects. I think it's relevant moving into strategic planning when we think of these are the things we have on our list through either previous strategic priorities, through commitments, through the board's budget, and hoping that it'll give you a little line of sight moving forward on strategic planning or further initiatives that we're always happy to receive them, but they got to fit into some kind of priority list. And so just bringing it to light about these are the things that focus mostly on this group. There's some that are regional in nature, but again, we do things for the board and other committees. So bringing to light some of the projects that are going on in your area, and hopes to bring these back on some kind of regular basis to show progress and update timelines.
Any discussion from directors? Director Rice?
I've got one question. I'm just wondering, the item there, drainage works, pretty vague. Not really sure what that is.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I think that was my fault too there. Just some of the works we discussed with you in terms of working with Modi and some of the drainage issues on, I think it was Henry Road, but our site visits with you. So just try to categorize that together. Maybe there's more too, right?
Director Vinesh?
Thank you, Chair. Just a question about the RFP for the on-island septic processing compost system that we approved in the budget. Should it be listed in here as well?
I think that's fair. Did it not make the list?
We would include it in the list, and I'm not aware about anything about septic process. I'm sorry.
We had
Director Monash?
we had some money in the budget for looking at the septic disposal in Area B there. So
This is the share cost with Electoral Area D as well?
yeah.
Yeah.
So again, we have a procurement policy. So when we prepare that, we will follow procurement policy and proper advertising of that, and open to eligible recipients. So. But we can make an amendment.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And yeah, we just also love like the dates for that. So when we could expect it would be great. Thank you.
Okay, Director Mawhinney.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to the engineering staff for this comprehensive list. Engineering staff has lots on the go, and it's great to see. I noticed an item which I thought may be missing from the Electoral Area C list. There were feasibility study funds which were allocated to investigating solid waste and recycling collection for the outer Discovery Islands and northern areas of Quadra Island. And I was hoping that that could get back on the list, and or, this is a follow-up question, perhaps amalgamated with the other service study that is being contemplated but not funded or passed. I'm not sure your thoughts on that, but regardless, the one study did not somehow make it onto the Area C list. And then the other question I have for engineering staff is that during our budget meetings, there was discussion about exploring water availability and a water service in the Cove, and I allocated funding in the 2023 budget for that. On the feasibility studies page of the Area C financial plan, one of 3 bullet points is, quote, the need for further investigation of potential well locations. And the 2023 feasibility study budget was increased to accommodate the study, but this engineering plan says that there isn't sufficient funds, so I'm wondering if you could share with me what has changed. And then my final question would be to our CAO. which is that he mentioned that these reports from planning and engineering will be perhaps coming on a regular basis, which I really appreciate. And I'm wondering what you could explain what regular basis means. Are we thinking like twice a year, once a year?
Okay, thank you. Maybe I can attempt a few. The last one easiest. I think on, you know, 2, 3 times a year. If I look at the budget, we kind of had something similar for financial reporting, whereas in the financial world, they do, 4Q reports. And we tried, our CFO tried at the time, several years ago, to introduce updates. And however, in our budgeting process, we do, when we approve the budget, that's kind of Q1, so you're up to date on everything Q1. Q4 is when we give you a projected the end, so they're like, well, we don't need Q1, Q4, so we looked at a couple times a year. Trying to take that same philosophy here, try to bring back progress reports a couple times a year and manage timelines and updates to that. So that's that question. In terms of the Q Cove water study, in looking at that, yes, we do have, I think when Wolf wrote not in the budget, maybe not in the budget to complete, implementation of a water service, but certainly we have money in the budget for water feasibility studies and to explore that. Certainly, it's just, I think not in the budget was to, construct or implement a water system. That's certainly not there, or the well development, but the study fees certainly, yes. And I can't remember if you had a question before that.
It was about the solid waste and the recycling collection from the Outer Discovery Islands, and that item that was budgeted for was also not on the electoral Area C list. Okay, but it says contemplated but not approved and not in the budget. So what does that mean then? Because I thought that we had
Well, I mean,
Approved it at the-
contemplated, there's some money in there in feasibility to look at it, but, I mean, that would have to be a new service presumably, and we don't have anything further on that, right? We examine these, we look at them, we have funds and resources to do that, but we have nothing committed beyond that. Like, there's no money to implement something, and there's no service to establish that. So, if you look at, say, no further progress, we don't know what that would be. We could come up with a plan and go, oh, that's crazy, that's way too expensive, or that doesn't work for people. So, we've just tried to write things, include things that are committed by the board at this point, so.
Okay, so it says feasibility study for solid waste service, contemplated but not approved and not in the budget, which I believe to be the item which maybe is even lower on the agenda today, which was something that I was interested in asking for a report on about the solid waste collection on the greater populated area of Quadra Island. But what my question was really focusing on is that in the feasibility studies budget for the 2023 year, I did allocate feasibility study funds for looking at a way that could possibly happen to provide recycling and solid waste services in some capacity to the Outer Discovery Islands and the Northern Quadra Island, and I don't see that item on this list.
Okay, so I think maybe not the greatest choice of wording, but the feasibility study is funded in there certainly. But to implement something, we don't even know if there's going to be a service to do that, okay? So again, I don't think maybe the greatest use of words, but when we say contemplated but not approved, not in the budget, to implement something that comes out of the study. I mean, we have to actually do something beyond studies, we have to have a service and we have to have requisition to do that, right? We're so far, that is so far ahead of us right now. We'll look at those, we bring forward the costs, and then we have discussion about whether we want to move forward on that plan and the service. So that part is not funded, but that is typical. You wouldn't fund something, you couldn't even fund something that you don't have a service yet for. So if we want to do solid waste collection, we couldn't get money for that until the service was established. So apologize, the wording is not clear, but we have funds in the budget to look at a solid waste service and what that would look like, the details of it. And we bring it forward, we'll say, this is what it looks like, this is what it costs, and then the board and the committee will decide if that's what we want to move forward on, and that would be establishing a service and looking at collecting a requisition.
Okay, so I guess, sorry, but like it says, you know, like Kwathiaski Cove sewer study, and then it says consultants engaged. So the next line, when it's talking about a study and it says not approved and not in the budget, I thought that that meant that the whole study, the feasibility study
No,
was not
no,
approved.
apologize for that, yeah, no.
Okay,
Implementation of what may come out of that, there's no funding for that yet. But that's typical. We would never do that, right? Like, you look at it, you figure out if the board, I think the fire service in Area A couple months ago was a good one. You go look at it, explore the cost, put it out to the folks. One group said yes, one group said no. And then the group that said yes, we'll look at implementing a requisition in next year's budget and establishing that. And then we used feasibility to explore that option. So when it says not in the budget, the implementation of whatever those recommendations are is not funded yet.
okay, so it's, in my mind, there's two separate items, but maybe it's gonna all get mashed together. Does engineering have anything to say about that, or you?
Well, again, what we do is we look at things that the board asks us to look into, study them, come up with how those services would be implemented, how would they work, what would they cost, and then we wait to see if the board supports that. And if they do, then we move to the next step. But you can't, it's the cart before the horse. You can't collect requisition for a service you don't even know you're gonna have or hasn't been approved or supported yet. Doesn't matter if it's waste collection or telecoms or whatever the heck it is.
Okay, so I guess then the feasibility studies for Outer Island solid waste is on the list, even though it says that it's not approved.
Implementation of whatever that study will say is not funded yet.
Anything further from Director Rice?
Just one question, on the water pressure improvements, the study that has been completed, are we going to see a copy of that?
I think we can. I think we're looking at options for those as well. The initial option we had for a booster station was extremely expensive, and I think what we're doing is exploring other options for that. But I think we probably had that at committee board before, whatever that was, and certainly available.
Yeah, we will be happy to provide you a copy with that study that was done in the past. And I recommend that you look at the timelines that we have to start this project in fall 2023, and this is because of the commitments that we have to our project. So we have a goal towards that as well this
Okay.
year.
The reason why I ask is that, you know, we still have a big problem in certain places there in Area D, and this is really preventing any progress in terms of new building, particularly in the areas that are greatly affected. So it would be nice to see a report just to kind of figure out where it's at.
Yeah, no, appreciate that. And I think we collectively need to meet with the city. Like we receive our bulk water from the city at a certain pressure, and it meanders its way, you know, from the city down through Area D. And then Area D has some isolated needs. And so it's not as simple as saying the city, hey, turn up the pressure, and because that might do. So then I think the initial solution we had was really isolated, really expensive, and we could come up with better ideas to that. So I think what we're going to do now is meet with the city and see if we can come up with something collectively to address the current residents, the pockets that we have, and then we need to look at, you know, greater overall development and those pressure zones and how we deliver it there. So.
Thank you.
Anything further? Seeing none, I'll call the question on receipt. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Number 5, building bylaw amendment, low human occupancy farm buildings for receipt.
Move receipt.
Second.
Discussion?
Nothing to add from staff, Mr. Chair?
Directors? Seeing none, on receipt. All those in favor? Opposed? None, that's carried.
So just a quick editorial on that, that puts us on a level playing field with the bylaw with the CVRD, so we have full consistency in terms of that issue and the building bylaw.
Thank you. Item B,
Move recommendation
read out, please.
that the committee recommend that the board consider first 3 readings and adoption of the bylaw number 158 amendment attached to the May 5th, 2023 report from the Chief Administration Officer.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, and that's carried. Number 6, Electoral Area C Advisory Planning Commission for receipt.
Move receipt.
Second.
Discussion?
So, Mr. Chair, as you can probably assume, Mr. Yates and Director Mawhinney have had substantial discussion about this. So I think the easiest thing at this point is if there is questions from Director Mawhinney, we're happy to answer it, but I don't think an introduction is necessary.
Thank you. Director Mawhinney?
Thank you, Chair. I am really grateful and appreciate the work of our corporate officer in providing these detailed responses because, you know, receiving input from a cross-section of the community is important to me, and I'm really pleased to receive this draft bylaw. I have some feedback. Is it more appropriate to go through it sort of line by line here? Is that what we should be doing?
Well, Mr. Chair, this is a draft bylaw. Again, we've got a lot of line by line, but if you have more, at this point, if there's amendments or comments or changes to be made, it would be to here. And what we would do is make those amendments, bring it back, and once this group was satisfied, we'd move it on to the board.
Great. Thank you for clarifying that for me. So I would like to offer my first recommendation or change that I'd like to see is that the third whereas, where it says the 2/3 of the members must be residents. I'm curious if the bylaw can prescribe above the minimum, and if so, I would like to. And I would like to say 90%. And alternately, I would be, if that's not something that can be contemplated, then I would be interested in adding a maximum of 100% residents, because that is not something that is mentioned in the Local Government Act.
Maximum of 100% of residents?
Yeah. Well, I'm just trying to like reiterate that I really want it to be resident-based and not, I think that 2/3 of an APC being residents is actually kind of a low number.
100% of residents, okay. That's a new one. Here's what I was just, Mr. Chair. If you want to read through those, it looks like you have them written down.
I do.
So how about you read through them, because this is, open, transparent session, and then give them to Mr. Yates. We will make comments, report on that, and bring it back to the next committee, if that works.
Sure. Well, that is my that's my recommendation for that one.
If I could just interrupt for a second and suggest
may.
that phrase, 100% maximum, isn't good English grammar. You wouldn't want to have it.
Okay. Well, really, what I would like to have is that the bylaw prescribe over the minimum. I'd like 90%. And my next question would be in the interpretation. I noticed that most everything is capitalized except for the word director. So maybe the director can be capitalized as well. Regarding commission membership, I would like it to have a maximum of 11 people. And rather than it saying represent a cross-section of the ratepayers, I would like that to read residents within the electoral area. Or persons, if residents is the inappropriate word, but I think that it needs to expand beyond the word ratepayers. And then there was a comment that Mr. Yates provided regarding that it had to have a minimum number as well as a maximum number. And if that was appropriate, then I would say a minimum of 5, but I wasn't sure if that was going to affect the amount of the quorum numbers. That was a bit confusing for me. So moving on to,
Mr. Chairman, if I could
yep.
just jump in on that point. I don't think, from my perspective anyways, not having a minimum number is not a problem whatsoever.
Oh, okay, great.
Not having a minimum number of members in the bylaw is not a problem from a legal perspective whatsoever. Just to clarify.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that, that I don't need a minimum. Under appointment of members, it says before appointing persons to the commission, the regional district shall invite applications from the general public, and I wasn't sure if you can specify general public in Area C. I would really like to make sure that they are the ones being notified.
It's an Area C APC, so.
Great. And regarding term of office for members, I would like to add that there was a term limit of 6 years. And I would, under election and term of chair, I appreciate the information that was provided, and I would like to have there to be a chair and a vice chair. And regarding attendance at meetings, I was curious if, because I haven't experienced an APC in recent memory, does an SRD staff person generally attend APC meetings as a secretary and provide resources and answers if they're needed?
Mr. Chairman, I believe that it would be appropriate for a regional district staff person, typically from the planning department, to attend APC meetings and advise on the issues around applications that are before the committee. The planning or the secretary, in my view, should either be a staff person, or if the APC was insistent, they could hire a local person to do that. We do have an obligation to ensure that those documents are made public and that they're accurate. And so whatever solution would work best, we would be looking at that.
Great, that's great. So that would be, so then under notice of application, number 14, when it says the secretary, that wouldn't necessarily, I was concerned that that might be like being delegated to a volunteer person on the board, or on the APC, but that doesn't seem likely. I do have another question on number 12, where it says matters to be considered expeditiously. And the commission shall consider such applications as may be referred to it by the regional district. And there is no definition in the earlier section which defines regional district, so I'm wondering if there should be, or if there's a way of confirming that could include referring by the director and not just the board.
Well, the board is the only one that makes the referrals. Individual directors have no authority, so. Like that.
Okay, I understood that the director could, that's what
So
Mr. Yates told me earlier, so maybe.
If I can jump in, there is provision, I believe, in this draft bylaw, and it is a generic bylaw. It's not really fashioned along the lines of Area C particularly. And I believe that is item 17 or section 17. The act does provide that a director may submit an item to the APC, and so we've tried to capture what that process might look like. And basically, again, it's a question of accuracy and transparency. So we're trying to put in place a process that meets both of those tests. When directors choose to submit something to an APC, how is that done? And what are the requirements for ensuring that those documents become public? So that's really what we have there.
Okay, so.
My apologies, it looks like section, I thought it was 17, but it may not be.
Well, number 17 does say if the commission is asked to consider a matter referred to it by the director. The commission shall ensure that a copy of the request and any related records are provided to the regional district, which to me makes it sound like the regional district is separate than the director, which brings me back to number 12, where it talks about referred to by the regional district, and that doesn't include director.
I'm not certain why a director or what you have in mind would, outside of applications that come to the regional district, why you as a director would refer something directly to an APC. Like I can't think of something that you would do. That would be unusual.
Okay, well, I guess my question was around the timing and the process. I wasn't sure if anything would only be referred from the board versus if something comes to EASC, then the director could refer it to the APC.
Well, there will be typically referrals from the EASC. Again, the committees just make recommendations to the board. The board would support that, and that would be the, kind of way the director's referral would be. But if you're thinking outside of that you're gonna make referrals, I would call that highly unusual. The referrals to the APC, and it's happened plenty of times, that the director will say, I want to ensure this item is referred to the APC. It typically is anyways. We haven't had one in Area C for, I don't think, forever, literally. But I would, if you're thinking of, like, that process happens through here. Applications come forward and they get referred to the APC. So you, as a director, can make that motion and support it. But I wouldn't get your mind around thinking that you are outside of this committee and board going to make referrals to the APC.
Oh, yeah, no, that wasn't my intention. I was really more considering like timeliness. And if something were to come to EASC, and, obviously I'm still learning the process here. So I was concerned that if it came to EASC and then it comes to the board and then it gets referred to the APC, that it extends the time that somebody is going to have to wait for their application to be considered.
So we would, if there's a timely matter, often it would come, you would bring that motion forward directly to the board as a result of timely, because let's say you made it EASC and then it goes to the board and there's a window of time. So in time-sensitive issues, it has in the past come straight to the board to depending on the board schedule. So, and there's the consistency or the alignment of the APC meetings sometimes with EASC and board as well. They all don't perfectly line up when an application comes forward and maybe the APC hasn't met, but those can be accommodated anyways through, if we're only talking about if items are of a timely manner. If they're not, they just, continue to roll through the process. If there's a timely manner, a motion would come forward directly to the board that it referred, but I can't think of, a staff inherently bring forward the applications to the APC anyways. Just haven't had one there, so.
Okay, yeah, that was really my concerning, was around timing and process and expedition of applications. So
One of the, if I may, Mr. Chairman, and I agree with what the CEO just said, I think in the past, if there have been delays with applications, it's usually, in my experience with APCs, having an irregular meeting schedule or having difficulty getting a quorum, those kinds of things, as opposed to staff not being ready to bring something before an APC.
Okay, great. So I did have a question because under process for consideration of applications, does the APC get an application prior to public hearing? I'm thinking the answer is yes, but I was just wanting confirmation.
Well, in my opinion, yes, they would typically. Once a public hearing is held, there's really no further input that is going to be generally allowed. So all of these processes typically will occur prior to a public hearing, if one is necessary.
Okay, great. So in item number 17, that the comments from Mr. Yates, he stated that the draft bylaw does not restrict the ability of the director to refer matters to the APC. Could that be added as a preamble into the language of number 17 then? That was my second to last question.
Well, like all of the other items brought up today, we'll certainly look at them. Typically, bylaws have a different, they're a legislative document rather than a policy document. There will be policy and other things that will, and guidelines for APC members, which will deal with non-legislative matters. So we'll look at it from that perspective, of course.
Okay, awesome. And my final thing that I wanted to say was that I did submit some suggestions for procedures as well, and it would be super cool if corporate staff was maybe going to consider creating a handbook of sorts for APC members, which included procedures, hopefully without being too intimidating.
Yeah, that's being looked at right now.
Amazing, thank you. Those are all my feedbacks for the draft bylaw. Thank you for your patience, Chair.
Thank you, Director Romini. Anyone else? See none on receipt. All those in favor? That's carried. Do we need a motion, Mr. Yates?
Mr. Chairman, it would be our intention, unless directed otherwise, to take the comments into account and bring back something further. From a staff perspective, it's really how quickly does this committee and the board wish to put something in place for Area C? We've not had an Area C, rather, APC in years and years, perhaps ever. So I'm not sure there's any rush to do this. We'll work through the process until everyone is satisfied.
That's fine, thank you. Okay. Bylaws, none. Correspondence, none. Director's reports, residential waste collection on Quadra Island. Director Mawhinney.
Thank you, Chair. Well, the reliability and costs of solid waste collection services on Quadra Island is causing some islanders to wonder about alternatives. Within the Strathcona Regional District, some electoral areas, such as Cortez Island and the Seward Valley, have solid waste services provided by the SRD. I'm curious about the costs of such a service for Quadra Island. Has a study looking into this ever been done before? And what are the steps needed to investigate this? And that's a question for the CAO, I guess.
To my knowledge, I don't think we have since this regional district's been in existence. So I think the answer is no. This motion would allow us to look at those things, but I have no memory of that in the past.
Okay, well, I would like to move that staff prepare a report on options for residential waste collection on Quadra Island.
Second.
Any further discussion? See none. All those in favor? None opposed. That's carried. Number 2, short-term vacation rentals. Director Mawhinney has a presentation verbally.
Thank you, Chair. As you may know, the Strathcona Regional District's 2022 Housing Survey for Area C detailed that short-term vacation rental numbers have exponentially increased. In 2016, there were 54. By 2021, there were 177. Interestingly, the 2022 Housing Survey details that 86% of the short-term vacation rentals in Area C are entire dwellings, which leads me to wonder what the legal status of short-term vacation rentals is within Area C. I understand that short-term vacation rentals may fall under the home occupation provision of the Quadra Island zoning bylaw. Notwithstanding that, I would like to move that this committee receive a report on the legal status of short-term vacation rentals in Area C and avenues for managing their growth.
I'll second that. Dinesh, second.
Thank you, Director Vinesh.
Second by Dr. Vinesh. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? I take it Director Vinesh is in favor. Any opposed? Hearing none, that's passed. Number 3, roadside parking. Director Winnie has a verbal presentation.
Thank you, Chair. There are several incidences of long-term parking of vehicles, including commercial vehicles, on Quadra's roadsides. Until recently, the Ministry of Transportation was able to check insurance and uninsured vehicles could be removed. However, ICBC is no longer providing expiry date tags, so Ministry of Transportation has no way of knowing if a vehicle is rightfully insured or not. The Quadra Island zoning bylaw has parking provisions under 10.9 for off-street parking. What I'm curious about is how or what the process is now for removing non-conforming commercial vehicles from roadside parking. Summer is coming, Quadra's roads are significantly busier, and long-term parking of wide vehicles in some cases is impinging on traffic and active transportation safety. I would like to move that a report be prepared on the legalities of commercial vehicle roadside parking and long-term roadside parking and how these matters would best be managed or enforced.
Do I have a
I'll second that.
Director Vanessa seconded it. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. No new business, no addendum items, closed sessions. Move receipt, or someone needs to move receipt of the CFO.
Move receipt.
Director Rice,
I'll second that.
Director Mooney seconded. Discussion, all those in favor? That's carried, and the recommendation?
I would move that the meeting be closed to the public to consider matters deemed to fall within the parameters of subsections 91E, F, N, and O of the Community Charter.
Seconder,
I'll second that.
Second.
discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right, let's move into closed.